Hey guys, welcome to another New World video. In today's video I wanted to have a closer look at the new Perfect Salvage system that was added to New World in the July patch. I covered this very briefly on the PTR, but I felt it was a good time to discuss it in a lot more detail as an official guide for my series. So let's get into it. So as anyone who plays New World knows, a huge part of playing this game is salvaging. Whether you're crafting, fishing, doing chest runs, running expeditions, anything really, your activity will end with a session of salvaging crap. This has always felt like a chore, mainly because it was simply unrewarding. 3 coins, a few repair parts, and a tiny fraction of the crafting materials back we used to make the items we were salvaging. It really some days just was easier to drop it all on the ground, to be honest, than go through the process of salvaging it. But with the introduction of this new system, salvaging has now got a lot more rewarding. It also actually can be something we do in order to progress our character, get rare materials, all sorts of new things. So this new system I mentioned is called, of course, the Perfect Salvage system. And what it does is simply this. When you salvage an item, you have a chance to perform a perfect salvage. Perfect salvages can reward you with the following: research materials, such as weapon scraps, that can be used to gain crafting trade skill experience. Special orbs that can be converted into gypsum casts, which bypass the normal daily limit for your gypsum. Materials to fabricate special items, and a lot more. All tiers of gear can potentially proc a perfect salvage, providing you with scraps. Tier 2 will provide you with armor scraps, Tier 3 with useful armor scraps, Tier 4 with valuable armor scraps, and Tier 5 with infused armor scraps. When you salvage an item, you have a flat % chance to see a perfect salvage regardless of the gear type, drop or crafted. 1% on white items, 2% on green, 3% on blue, and 5% on purples. This generally applies to every item in the game with a couple of exceptions. Our first exception to this rule is of course legendary items, crafted or dropped. These will always salvage into fragments and yield 50 umbral shards. And fragments have a slightly different use than scraps, which we will talk about in a moment. The second exception is of course items gained through outpost rush or gypsum casts. These do not have any chance to ever perfect salvage. Even the legendaries do not give fragments or umbral shards. And our final exception is the named items that drop in expeditions from bosses. These do not perfect salvage either. This would interfere with the materia system that was implemented, so when you salvage these you will always get materia, not perfect salvages. So now that we know what salvages and to what it salvages, let's look at how this benefits us as players. The 2 resources you will receive from perfect salvages are scraps and of course fragments. You can receive both scraps and fragments for arcane, armor, engineer, jewelry, and weapons. And although fragments will always be legendary, scraps are a bit different. First, they are bound. They cannot be sold. Also, they come in the following tiers: common, uncommon, rare, and epic. If you proc a perfect salvage and then receive scraps, the first thing you can do with them is salvage them and receive a large amount of repair parts. However, they have many other uses that you may also want to consider. You can take these scraps to the corresponding workstations: outfitter for armoring, workbench for engineering, forge for weaponsmithing, you get the idea. And once there, you can then use them to extract materials from scraps, which will of course be tier specific: cloth, planks, ingots. These will provide you with a small amount. Another really great use of scraps is of course using them again at the workstations for research. What this does is allow you to convert the scraps into research, giving you gains in crafting experience for the corresponding trade skill, and a different amount of experience for the tier of the scrap that you use. All you do is simply select the research notes, craft them, and receive the amount of crafting experience from the scrap you have invested. This will make a huge difference in the amount of materials we will use to train our crafting skills from now on. Because as you know, while crafting things like shields for weaponsmithing or infused gloves for armoring, we will be salvaging them as we craft them, which will naturally produce these scraps, which we can then use to bump our experience, giving us a lot more bang for our invested materials. Now for the fragments. If you salvage a 600 legendary item and receive your fragments, you can salvage the fragments for a large amount of repair parts once again. You will also notice these are not bound and can be sold on the market if you felt like it, for a nice way to make some quick coin. I wouldn't recommend doing this however, but it is an option if you wish. One thing that's really nice about fragments over scraps is, unlike scraps, fragments can be extracted into cooldown materials such as asmodium, runic leather, and phoenix weave and glittering ebony. This of course is done at the workstation that corresponds with the fragment type. Now, unlike scraps, you won't find some legendary research notes giving you a boatload of trade skill experience. But they have another amazing use at the crafting stations. You need them along with a runestone stopwatch for crafts to guarantee 598 to 600 gear score crafts. You need 2 of the same fragment for the corresponding craft. A cool side note here is that if you craft a shield regularly and it rolls 600, it will be epic and only have 3 perks. But for some weird reason, when you craft one using the stopwatch, it gets the 4th perk and becomes legendary. This would be simply amazing if this was the only use, but it isn't. They have another use as well. So the final use of fragments is to create special gypsum orbs at the kiln, called Infused Orbs. These were added alongside the Perfect Salvage system in the July patch. These orbs allow you to craft an additional gypsum cast each day. This means you can craft 2 casts for any item you're currently attempting to max your expertise with, or receive double the umbral shards if you're already 625 in that slot. For example, I can make 1 bow cast using my topaz gypsum, and 1 bow cast using my infused orb. And boom, now I receive 800 umbral shards in 1 day for this slot only. Alternatively, I can do the same for a slot I am attempting to max, receiving potentially 6 to 8 points instead of 3 to 5 in only 1 day. A very awesome feature for those who are grinding away on fresh 60s for sure. What makes this even better is that you can buy these on the market, so even if you don't get lucky enough to get 600 gear score items to salvage for these infused shards, many others have, and you can purchase them to complete these extra gypsum each day. You will need different amounts of fragments for each orb type because, as we know, materials and trade skill difficulty will make receiving them easier or more difficult depending on the trade skill. For the arcane orb, you'll need 2. For the armor orb, you'll need 6. For the engineer orb, 4. For the jewelry orb, 2. And for the weapon orb, 4. So guys, that about covers it for perfect salvaging. I just wanted to make this video so it was clear and everyone would understand exactly how it works. If you have any other questions, please feel free to comment. Join our community Discord and ask. Someone will always answer very quickly. I would also like to take a moment to thank my supporters. Without you guys, I wouldn't be here making these videos. You have no idea how important you are. All you guys who hit the super thanks button, subscribe, and even sign up to my Patreon. You guys are awesome. And as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.